My review for Civil War is... no, guys, it's a good movie, but it's not a great movie. It's not Alex Garland's best work. It's probably third best. You're not going to top Ex Machina. Okay, so this movie is divisive because when you watch the trailers for it, you're kind of like, well, okay, there's a civil war going on in America. Who's the good guys? Who's the bad guys? Do you want it to make a statement as to say either the red guys are bad or the blue guys are bad? And the movie doesn't do that. In fact, there's a good scene in here where Kirsten Dunst's character says it brilliantly. We're the journalists. We take photos of all the atrocities, and then we leave it to you to decide what to think about it. And if you think about it like that, that's exactly what Alex Garland is trying to deliver here with the movie Civil War. And that's going to work for some people, but it won't for everybody. Because based on the very first trailers that came out, it's kind of like, well, we thought that we were going to get maybe the possibility to, romanticize, to, have this kind of dream of now we're going to own the liberals, or, finally the far right is going to get their comeuppance. Well, if you're looking for that in Civil War, it's not going to deliver that to you. So its whole, I think, goal is to undermine all of your preconceived notions, and it does that in the way that I just said about the war photography people. The photographers are just there to take the pictures. This movie's just there to show you what would happen, or what would a civil war in North America look like, without having to say outright in your face, this is from the perspective of one side. It tries to play the middle game here. It's ambiguous about certain things, but it uses a lot of the language that's being used today, like Antifa. There's references to like an Antifa massacre, and it's kind of like, wait a minute though. We would assume that the Antifa people were doing the massacring, or was it the Antifa people that got massacred? It's that kind of ambiguousness that will not please a lot of people, because if you're going into this, as I said, wanting to own the libs, or wanting to see the extreme right-wing side of people get like their comeuppance, you're not going to get that. But it does give you enough information in here to make determinations about certain factions. I would say you meet some soldiers along the way, and it poses the right questions. Can you trust these soldiers? Are the soldiers on our side or their side? Because they're dressed in U.S. Army clothing, right? And then in the trailers that we did see before with Jesse Plemons, it's kind of like, well, maybe they're bad guys too, in sort of a way. So it's full of ambiguity, and I know that a lot of people will not like that. That's about the gist of what I could say I think most people are going to be angry about. I'm not angry about this movie for that stuff. I'm more angry about this, not angry, I'm more frustrated with this movie, with its story and its execution of that story and the characters within that story. Because, as I said, this movie tries to dance that line of not preaching about certain ideologies, but by not doing that, by trying to play that middle road, you're preaching pretty loud and clear that you're just kind of like, well, you're not being bold. And in not being bold, I think you miss a lot of the punches that you could be making more effectively. So Civil War, 2024. A journey across a dystopian future America. And that's key right there, guys. A dystopian future America. If you're somebody coming into these reviews saying, Texas would never get together with California, then you're not paying attention to the message of the movie. And if that's your only argument, then why would you even bother going to watch this movie, right? Because we're telling you, everybody's coming out of this and reviewing this is telling you, Of course, Texas and California would not be partners in our world, but this was a movie not about our world. A dystopian future America. Okay? You have to understand that. And I try to drive that home in my straight out of the theater reaction. But again, as I said, that's not the stuff that got me angry. Following a team of military-embedded journalists. Kirsten Dunst and the guy are military-embedded journalists, and Kaylee Spaney's character is an up-and-comer. She wants to become, she's already done some field work, so it's kind of like some of the stuff that happens in it that did get me frustrated has to do a lot with her character. So, as they race against time to reach DC before rebel factions descend upon the White House. And as I said in the beginning, you're not quite clear if the president is a good guy or a bad guy from what the beginning statements are, but they do, as I said, try to dance that fine line of that middle game, and then you hear something like, oh, the president's now in his third term. That's not how that works in the States. Presidents don't have a third term. So it does try to make some things definitive, right? And then you realize by the end it's pretty clear exactly what's happened and what it's trying to be an allegory for, what it's trying to be a metaphor for. It's trying to be a cautionary tale of don't let somebody be a dictator when they tell you straight up off the bat that on day one they're going to be a dictator. All right? As I said, but none of that stuff got me angry or got me heated about it. I'm talking about it heatedly and passionate now because that's the metaphor talking about reality out here for us, right? Alex Garland wrote and directed this. I felt the touch of studio interference in this for some reason. Kirsten Dunst, people are saying that, she just spent the 2 hours of the movie with a frustrated, angry look on her face. Yeah, she does. She does put in a really good performance, but I don't understand the evolution of her. Like, is there an evolution of character arc there? I don't know. Because they were trying to tee up kind of like a master apprentice kind of thing between her and Kaylee Spaney's Jessie, of kind of like, well, she's the new photographer and she's the old seasoned one, and trying to show her the ropes of what it takes to take wartime photography. Wagner Moira did a good job. He did okay, but there's a few things in there that I'll talk about later. Stephen McKinley Henderson also did a really good job as kind of like the older man. He's also a journalist, but he does a lot of the writing. He's like, you had different style of journalists. You had interviewers, you had writers. He's a writer, and then you had the photographers, right? And he did a good job. He did a really good job of helping to ground kind of like the sanity of the situation of like, guys, it's a really dangerous situation going over there. We shouldn't go over there. And I liked his character. But the movie's got problems. And it's got some major glaring ones with its story and its story structure, the way that things unfold. Because it felt like at times there were scenes missing. Like we jump too quickly to one emotion to the next. Wait a minute, you were standing there crying in rage and anger and frustration, but in the very next scene, you're in a war zone, smiling and laughing, going, ha, 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 ha. It's so fun to be. No, what? Like I saw that in the theater, and it's towards the climax, and I was like, that character wouldn't behave like that. That wouldn't happen in this situation. This is stupid. Like I literally said it while I was watching the movie. This is stupid. This would not happen. Okay. Now, as I said, Kaylee Spaney's character is the up-and-coming photographer, and she's, wanting to learn the ropes and stuff. And Alex Garland establishes that fairly early in the film that she's a little wet behind the ears when it comes to like this opening scene kind of here. And um, okay, as an audience, we understand that. But that carries over so many other times where nonsensical war stuff happens, where where you're constantly going to the character uh, and saying, "You understand that we're in a dangerous situation here, right? Uh, you understand that this is a war zone, right, Kaylee Spaney? You understand that. So then why in the next scene would you go off and do something completely reckless that not only endangers yourself, but the rest of the team that you're with? Because when it comes to war and like post-apocalyptic scenarios like we all are, then we should have the understanding that when you're going on uh, a mission, that you have the responsibility for your own safety, but your actions also will endanger everybody else that you're with. And as a wartime photographer trying to learn the ropes, that's rule number one that she should understand. And okay, for the first scene, I can understand. There's a scene, um, I think it's shown in the trailers, of like a gas station kind of thing, and there's some like bodies hanging, and it's kind of like she stands there in horror of, okay, we get it. And then some people come in, and it's like, you're just going to continue standing there, seriously, and you're going to go off all by yourself again, seriously? Okay, I get it. You're trying to establish that she's rookie, but then she goes on to do continuous, uh, reckless, absolutely reckless, audacious, stupid behavior. This is one of the scenes. And it's like, where did this come from? Why is this in the movie? You could have established, like, it establishes two characters where you didn't need to establish them like this. You could have just have them shown up at the stadium before this and have them come along. But the way that they introduce these two characters with this, you don't put your life on the line and risk other people's safety by them having to have the possibility of trying to come out and save you, which is exactly what happens, and it happens later in the film. So it's kind of like, it's so frustrating because it says so many great things, but then for all the good things that it says, it takes mighty leaps back with its audacity in the storytelling and the execution of that storytelling. And for that, that's why I'm not so satisfied with Civil War. As I said, it's a good movie. There's some really good stuff in there, but it's completely undermined by ridiculousness. Where it's like, okay, what are you trying to accomplish with this? You want to give us a little bit of levity? That even in, we're going to try on dresses. Yes. Yes, guys. In the middle of a war zone where people are dying all around us, we don't know who's hostile or not. We're going to try on dresses. You made your point earlier in the film that, yes, every situation we come into is dangerous, but this is a shot from the trailer, guys. This is a shot from the trailer. So this is from the first trailer. There's good performances. Jesse Plemons shows up for maybe 3 minutes of screen time and is very effective. You felt menace, but that's the power of Jesse Plemons, right? Um, it's just it's middle tier here. So let's go over to my score sheet, and I'll try to start to fill in some numbers, and then we will go over to the Rotten Tomato meter and take a look at what other people are saying and see if we agree with that. Acting, as I said, Kirsten Dunst. I know some people will rag on it, but actually, I'm going to give acting a full 2 points. I am. But where I fall apart here is the directing and the story. The story is a fantastic premise. And before anybody says, well, James, why don't they just make a movie all about where one of the sides wins? And then you can counter that by saying, okay, now we can make where the red team gets to win. But then once you start making movies like that, guys, that's when you start to realize that you're making military propaganda. So this movie's trying to not do that, but it's also saying something about it as well. And it dances that fine line. And I don't think Alex Garland was the right man to pull this kind of a story off. I don't know who would be actually able to pull this story off with the execution of it. I really don't. It's really slow to get into. Uh, it's really slow paced in the beginning. It's a good 40 minutes before we start to actually get into what the actual meat of the story is. I liked it because I kind of liked the journalistic side of things, right? The war photographer going and putting their lives on the line. But it gets convoluted by I think by executives, and I could be wrong about this, that executives came in and said, no, we got to have something else that people can relate to. The outside character, the fish out of water. So let's put in a character like Kaylee Spaney. And maybe Alex Garland did have that idea to begin with. But as I said, it wasn't very progressive story-wise. Her character, did she really evolve towards the end? Do you really like any of these characters? Are you rooting for them to survive, right? Maybe the old man, but it's like Kaylee Spaney. Do you sympathize with her? Do you like? What lesson do you want her to learn? Kind of thing. And at the end of the day, it's kind of like, well, that's not the point of the movie. The most point of the movie is that here's a bunch of stuff that's going to make you feel certain ways, and it's supposed to make you internalize why you're feeling those ways about political situations. But as I said, I'm not frustrated with that stuff. I'm more frustrated with the story and execution. And I'll say it like this. Because this was a drama, some people are giving it a little bit more slack than it should be. But let's change up the genre, and would it still work? Let's say if this was a horror movie. Would you still have the same standard of, well, the bad guys are obviously over there. There's some dead bodies over there. Let's go stand there in front of Leatherface's house. Oh, there's some guys coming in from the sides. Let's continue to stand there. In fact, let's have a conversation with them. If it was a horror movie, would you let that fly? And then why is it changing it to a drama? Change the logic in the scenes, right? So that's where I have faults with the Civil War. So that's why I'm so harsh and critical on the story. I feel like I need to justify that as I move on through my score sheet here. Cinematography and score out of a possible 1 point each. The score had some interesting needle drops. The soundtrack, there's some interesting score there, but for the most part, I felt like it was serviceable. You could probably give it a full point, but it's not like a soundtrack that you want to go and buy them. Buy it and put it in your library kind of thing. I do want to address the cinematography here. Cinematography was, again, this goes to studio interference, because from what I heard, Alex Garland didn't really think that this was like IMAX quality. It was never meant to be IMAX, but the studio wanted to put it out in IMAX, so they kind of like upgraded it at certain points. I saw it in a standard movie theater with AVX sound. The sound was impressive, like with all the explosions and stuff. And Alex Garland knows how to frame a shot. We know that. I don't believe that the IMAX experience is warranted. This almost felt like this should have been a streaming movie, and I think it would have served better on a streaming service. Because yes, some of the cinematography is cinematic, but you don't need to be paying the $15 or $16, $18 for the AVX theater for the DX theater, or you definitely don't need to be paying the $23 for the IMAX. No. So it's a dicey. So I kind of have to give like a serviceable rating there for cinematography. Like there's some good shots. No, James, you are going to give cinematography a full point. That's it. That's it. I'm changing it. Full point. Whoops. What did I miss? What did I bugger up there? Whoops. There we go. Yeah, I'll give cinematography a full point. Um, but the directing is it's tough. There's, as I said, there's some jarring editing in here where scenes back to back just don't make a whole lot of sense. It feels like there were scenes missing to fill in some exposition on stuff. So let's go over to the tomato meter and see what other people are saying, and we'll finalize the watchability factor of this film. As of Saturday, 83% by critics, 78% by the audience, which I gotta say is a little bit shocking. It's a little bit high from the critics, but I would say this: take it with a grain of salt, because critics are journalists. This movie panders to journalists and journalism about the story must come first. And if you're like that, that's why you got to take the critics' ratings here a little bit more. Well, is that for me? I don't know. Um, I would go more from the audience score on this one. 78% by only 250, and I think that'll come down a little bit. Um, yeah, let's see what people are saying, James. Let's see what people are saying. Movie Freak. As laudable as numerous aspects of the production may be, Garland's Civil War remains a vexing mixed bag. Yeah, that's about what I would say. Let's take a look and see if there's anybody big here uh, from the critics. Well, based because I just said that critics like it, Stuckman probably liked it, right? Um, I'm curious to see what Jeremy Johns said. But I'm looking for like a big name here that I want to. I'm looking for a Richard Roper or somebody big like that that I could go from. Dan Merrill, there's somebody we trust. A human story, not a political one. Yeah, and I've echoed that a lot. In choosing to follow a group of journalists, Civil War takes the focus off why the war and puts it in on the effects of war. Okay, but as I said, did you really forgave the driving sequence and the kind of like, yeah, obviously they did. They overlooked a lot of the story structure and stuff. They're like, hmm. And that happens sometimes, right? Where it's like I liked so much part of so many other parts of the movie that I'm willing to overlook the rest of the faults. New York Post: Garland's movie is no more vital to the discourse than The Purge, and is about 1% as entertaining. It's an interesting take that you bring in The Purge, because The Purge wasn't very political. Civil War, because it is dealing with the topic of civil war, it's hard not to say that it's political, and that's why I say it's dicey when you're trying to ride that line of ambiguity. And as I said, for most people, it's not going to work. But I'm really surprised that the critics are really overlooking the audacity. Like there's no excuse for the audacity. By the time that whole car sequence happens, she should have learned her lesson not to do anything stupid like that. So you're literally sitting there pulling your hair out, going, yeah. Anyway, it's not good for my blood pressure thinking about it, because it just gets me worked up. Um, so I am going to be giving this movie a higher score than you would think based on my reactions. Michael Phillips. It's extremely tense, well acted, brutally casual. Brutally casual, yeah. But it did get the blood pumping towards the end. It did, but that's because of the action. And we'll see. Alonzo Duralde, good. If we don't have at least a vague idea of what each side stands for, or at least sense of the rhetoric and posturing that has led to the country to all of this, uh, to all of cataclysm, the film's message is reduced to, sure, war sure does suck. Yeah, well, that's precisely what it. Yeah, that's its main headline message is that war sucks. I think because it's taking place in the U.S., people want definitive answers. And as I said, people wanted to have that fantasy of finally we get to own the libs. Finally we get to do this. And it's kind of like, guys, there are no monsters or supernatural aspects in Civil War, but make no mistake, this is a horror film. The horrors of war are detailed in a visceral and chaotic way, but it's the idea of the societal collapse that haunts. I was looking for Richard Roper, but I don't think we either I passed over him or I just don't have the time to scroll through all of these reviews. Amy Nicholson, do we like her? This is a lean, cruel film about the ethics of photographing violence, a predicament of any one of us could be in if we have a smartphone in our hands during a crisis. Well, during a crisis, I'm not even taking out my phone. I'm getting my family and loved ones out of there at the cost of my own body, if that's going to be the case. Okay, there's Richard Roper. With horrific wars raging in other parts of the world and with politically charged violence part of the fabric of this country, civil war will hit home no matter where you live. Well, no, unfortunately, Richard, that's a weird take. I'm in Canada and it doesn't really hit home for me. It just more or less frustrates me. But as I said, there's some really good stuff in there, guys. There is some really good stuff. Grace Randolph, here we go, final one. Bottom line, Alex Garland's Civil War is poorly researched. As a result, research to what? How guns kill people? Research to how people would organize militias? What? You mean, like, that seems like it's directed towards the whole Texas, uh, California thing. And if that's what you're going to argue, then your arguments are, I'm going to discard it right away. As a result, many things in the film don't make sense and feel inaccurate are regards to America. Even when it comes to criticisms, the film is not just wildly irresponsible, it's not well made. No, I thought, well, I thought if there was ever going to be a dictator, that's how the U.S. military would respond with brutal force, one way or another. You're not staying in the White House. You're getting out. That's what would happen. And if anybody's deluded in thinking that somehow they would be able to maintain power in a dictatorship, no, of course not. Of course not. And I like the definitive message about that part, at least. All right, let's wrap up this score sheet and get to the final score for me. Do you need to go to the theater to watch this? It's got a very interesting premise. But do you need to go to the theater to watch this? If you're worried about sitting next to somebody who's going to be scoffing at it, throwing popcorn at the screen because it's not making the statements that they want, no, don't go to the theater. In fact, I would even say that this one's probably worth just waiting for it to be on streaming so you can watch it at home. This is probably the lowest watchability factor that I would give. Like maybe I can give 6.5. If you're an Alex Garland fan, if you're a Kirsten Dunst fan, Jesse Plemons fan, the trailer was enough to pique your interest, then it would be worthwhile checking out. But it's one of those things where you only want basic. I don't ever have plans to watch this movie again. It's not like Spotlight where it's like making strong statements about journalism and going out to make, you know, getting the story, no matter how difficult the story is, the subject matter of the story may be. It's not like one of those movies. And if you want to look for a better movie about journalism, go check out Spotlight because that was a masterpiece. But James, it's about the photography in war times. One of the points was to ruffle the feathers, and it's ruffling feathers. Civil War is. So mission accomplished by Alex Garland, I would say. It's just not. There's, it's not a stellar movie, and it's not going to be in the conversation for one of the better movies of the year for sure. It's not, and it just felt like a big swing and a missed opportunity, right? Um, and there's ways you could have done it to play both sides and make dramatic statements about both sides. There was opportunities because you did have characters that would show up like Jesse Plemons. That you could have explored some of those ideas and flushed it out much better. So yeah, I think that's about where I land. 6.5, and that's a generous 6.5, guys. Very generous. 6.5 for Civil War. What do you guys think? Are you going to go and check out this movie, Civil War? Are you going to join the conversation? If you are, let me know in the comments below. This is just one of those movies that gets me triggered about thinking about just think about the story structure, guys. Think about the character development. Think about how the characters are acting, and does it make sense to how they behave just the scene before that? And once you start to do that, you realize this is not a very well written movie. It's got some really bold ideas, but in its execution, it's Civil War. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below, and we will talk about it. You're watching Mirror Domains. All right. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all I said about it. That's like Ex Machina was just so high up there, guys. It's a hard standard to beat when your best work was your first one. But Alex Garland's still young enough that he's got a lot of time to evolve and come out of it, and we'll see how it lands. I don't call it a divisive movie because of the political statements. That's not the way that I look at it. All right, I'm going to go over to Joe Blow here and see what people are saying. Setting records for A24. Let's take a look at that. Oh, that's it. It's grossed $10 million on Thursday and Friday. Is now expected to have a $23 million opening. Should be able to compete with Godzilla X Kong, although Godzilla and X Kong is now on its third week. No Blu-ray for Killers of the Flower Moon. Good. Eesh. Now that's another movie that I have no plans to ever revisit. I sat through the 3 hours and 40 minutes, but it was kind of like, ugh. Blair Witch Project says new Blumhouse film shows disrespect to the original cast and crew. Yeah, they're doing a Blair Witch movie again. I didn't have time to read the story. So, the Blair Witch movie that should have been left alone. So, what does that mean, that they're actually going to show the witch? I don't know. That seems to go into the production budgets and stuff like that. I don't know. Maybe we can find a better article to articulate that for us. Why the first Omen succeeded where others failed? Well, for me, guys, I'm passionate about the first Omen, talking about movies that get me triggered. No, I didn't. Again, first Omen is like Civil War. I didn't hate it, but it wasn't all that good. So when people are coming out saying it's the best thing like since sliced bread, I'm just shocked. I'm like, did we watch the same movie? Continuity, guys, and character development. is what I can't scream loud enough from the high heavens. Awesome art. Okay, nice. You found some good art. And Alex Garland is going to be doing the 28 Years Later movie. He's going to be writing it, and with Danny Boyle directing. Alex Garland, he needs a good editor, good person to say that part of the story doesn't make sense. Cut that part out. It's like, yeah. Anyway, I talked about that at nausea. So let's try to find some stuff that makes me happy. 80 stars. We get back the Fall Guy review. Yeah, CinemaCon people there got to go see Fall Guy. Eleanor Coppola, director of Francis Ford Coppola, has died at 87. Bummer. At least she got to see a cut of Megalopolis, hopefully. My condolences. Ryan Gosling initially didn't want to perform I'm Just Ken. There's a lot of ways that can go wrong. Yeah. There was a lot of ways, but he pulled it off, man. He pulled it off. Kirsten Dunst wonders whether the world actually needs a Spider-Man. Well, we don't need Spider-Man 4. People would just like it. What's it? We learned from No Way Home that her and Peter got married. So it was like a happily ever after for them. What else more could you explore? Other than perhaps their kid having some spider abilities and trying to deal with it from that angle. Friday the 13th, the final chapter. Shirt is now available. Terrifier 3 adds Daniel Roebuck as Santa Claus. Emma Stone is in talks to lead an untitled film at Universal with Brigsby's Bear. Okay. A Chris Farley biopic with Paul Walter Hauser playing the legendary comedian. That one will be tough to watch. I was a big Farley fan. Just don't hold back any of the punches. Guys, people liked him because he was loud, over the top, but he had problems in the worst ways. And don't pull back on any of that stuff. Because that lack of having that uh, pacification made him very uh, grumpy and difficult to work with at times. And he was mean, like mean, outright mean to people. Don't hold back on that stuff. Because you like to think that he was the big, fun, laughable, fun guy. But his addictions and it was really, yeah, kind of a sad situation. Michael J. Fox talks 80s. I heard a quote recently that Michael J. Fox was thinking about if another acting project came up, he would be open to doing something. All right. Is that it from that? Movie Web? All right, guys. Well, we did 4 episodes of Fallout today. And I was pretty vocal there for my review for Civil War. So I think we're going to wrap things up here. It is 3:37. I just want to be able to relax. Chris Schober says, I just got done watching It's a Wonderful Knife, James. It's a really good film. Lots of kills. Yeah, what was It's a Wonderful Knife? Um, came out last year. 53 by critics, 72 by the audience. I'm on Google right now. And the new Venom movie is going to be called Venom the Last Dance. Yeah, I think we talked about that like a couple of weeks ago. I'm not really interested in Venom anymore. They they reinvigorated my interest with Venom with the post credit scenes of him being pulled into the MCU. But then when they put him right back, it was kind of like, oh well, we're back at square one. It's just going to be him fighting another symbiote, and that's like, how is that entertaining, guys? It's a rinse and repeat for Venom. How's that evolve the character? How's that evolve the story? It doesn't. So yeah. Arglass says, nice run of watch alongs, James. See you on Reacher, if not before. Thanks. Yeah, cheers. So I am working the next 2 days, Sunday and Monday, guys. Full days. So we'll be back on Tuesday, and hopefully jumping right into the Reacher season 2. All right. Thumbs up. See you next time. You're watching Mirror Domains.